Heartland Season 19, Episode 7 is about to push every single character to a breaking point. And honestly, I don't think most of us are ready for what's coming. This episode is where emotions turn into decisions, relationships get tested for real, and the calm before the storm finally ends. We've seen tension building silently in the background, but Episode 7 is where everything spills over. If you thought the drama we've seen so far was intense, just wait. Because what's about to happen will change the course of Amy and Nathan's story forever. And yes, it may hurt to watch. Heartland Season 19 has already been a season of quiet, emotional storms, but Episode 7 takes all those subtle issues and brings them right to the surface. The walls that everyone tried to hold up are starting to crack, especially for Amy. For the first time in a long while, she is beginning to imagine a future again. A real future. One that isn't defined by grief or by the shadow of her past. But just when she finally begins to open her heart fully, the world around her starts shifting in ways she cannot control. And the saddest part is, she doesn't even realize how fragile this new happiness really is. Nathan has been her comfort, her calm, the first genuine spark she's felt since Ty. But Episode 7 forces both of them to face the truth. Love doesn't exist in a vacuum. Love comes with history, responsibility, and sometimes the weight of family that refuses to let go. Nathan's sister becomes a bigger threat than we ever expected, not because she is loud or dramatic, but because she is calculating in the quietest, most manipulative ways. She knows exactly how to push Nathan's emotional pressure points, especially when it comes to the ranch and their father's legacy. And Nathan, no matter how strong he seems on the outside, is someone who has always been shaped by obligation. So, while Amy starts to believe this relationship might be the start of a second chapter in her life, one where joy is allowed again, Nathan finds himself being pulled backwards, dragged into old wounds he never healed. The tragedy is that neither of them are wrong. Amy is finally ready to move forward, and Nathan is terrified of losing the only piece of his family history he has left. Their love is real, but Episode 7 will show us that real love isn't always enough when life demands sacrifice. And this is where the emotional tension becomes unbearable. Amy is ready to choose him, but Nathan is about to face the hardest decision of his life. And whether he realizes it or not, choosing the ranch might mean losing her. Meanwhile, the rest of Heartland moves around them like a living reflection of their conflict. Jack sees the storm long before anyone else does, but even he knows that some lessons need to be learned the hard way. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Amy begins to feel the echo of something she thought she buried. The fear of losing love again just when she finally allowed herself to feel it. The real turning point in Episode 7 begins when Amy notices the shift in Nathan before he even says a word. It's subtle, the kind of change only someone who truly cares would recognize. He becomes quieter, a little distant, always thinking but never speaking about what's weighing on him. And Amy, who once lived years of her life navigating grief in silence, recognizes that look immediately. It's the look of someone being pulled in two different directions at once. The problem is, Amy believes that love alone can hold the two of them together, while Nathan is slowly realizing that he is standing at the edge of a choice that may cost him everything. His sister knows exactly when to corner him, and she plays her role perfectly. The protective sibling, the concerned business partner, the one who claims to care about their future. But beneath the surface, every word she says is a reminder of responsibility, inheritance, and legacy. She reminds him that the ranch is more than land and buildings. It is their father's life work, the one thing he left behind. She doesn't say it directly, but the message is clear. If he chooses Amy, he risks losing everything his family built. And Nathan has never been someone who can easily turn his back on history. So, while Amy is dreaming of a future where love is simple again, Nathan is drowning in the weight of expectations he never asked for. This distance might seem small at first, just a few missed moments, a few quiet dinners, a few unanswered looks. But small cracks always grow into fractures when nobody addresses them. And Amy can feel the shift, even if she doesn't know how to name it yet. She has been through heartbreak before, but this time it feels different because she finally believed she was safe again. Meanwhile, her encounter earlier with the groom who fears riding a horse for his wedding becomes more symbolic than she expected. Helping him confront his fear forces her to confront her own unresolved emotions. She watches someone else step into their new life with courage, even though they are terrified. And she can't help but think about her own wedding with Ty, the promises they made, and the love she lost too soon. She realizes that she wants that joy again, not because she wants to forget Ty, but because she is finally ready to live again. But readiness means nothing when the person you love is being torn apart by things you cannot fix. And that is the quiet tragedy of this episode. Amy wants to move forward, Nathan wants to hold on to the past, and neither of them know how to meet in the middle without losing something they can't replace. The emotional tension keeps building, silently but consistently, as if the whole world around them is holding its breath, and we, as the viewers, can feel it too. That uneasy, aching feeling that something is about to break. Because love can survive a lot. But love cannot survive when two hearts are beating in different directions. And episode 7 is where we see the first real signs of that heartbreaking divide, while Amy and Nathan's relationship slowly begins to tremble under the weight of everything unsaid. Another storyline quietly rises to the surface, one that will shape the future of Heartland in ways many fans may not have expected. Dex, the new ranch hand who has been drifting between dreams, failures, and impulses, finally starts to understand the consequences of his actions. The rodeo stunt he pulled without warning wasn't just reckless, it was a symbol of the way he has lived so far, chasing adrenaline instead of purpose, excitement instead of stability. And for Jack, someone who has lived an entire lifetime with responsibility carved into every decision, Dex's behavior was more than just disappointing. It felt like betrayal. So, when Jack told him to leave, it wasn't said in anger, but in the quiet firmness of someone who believes in tough lessons. But what makes episode 7 powerful is that Dex actually learns from this moment instead of running from it. For the first time, he feels the weight of losing something good. Heartland was never just a job for him. Even if he didn't say it aloud, being at the ranch gave him a sense of belonging he never felt before. And when that is taken away, the emptiness hits him harder than he expected. The turning point for Dex comes when he crosses paths with Katie. Their connection so far has been subtle, almost unspoken, like two people who don't yet realize the role they will play in each other's lives. But in episode 7, Katie becomes the person who sees Dex in a way no one else has. Not as a reckless kid, not as a disappointment, but as someone who is lost and trying to figure out who they are supposed to be. She doesn't lecture him. She doesn't scold him. She simply listens. And that alone is enough to shake Dex, because he's not used to being understood. Katie encourages him to go back to Jack, not to beg, not to prove anything, but to take responsibility. And this moment might seem small on the surface, but emotionally, it is huge. Because responsibility is the first step toward growing up. And Dex realizing this marks the beginning of a transformation that will change him permanently. So Dex returns, not just to the ranch, but to the idea of who he wants to become. And at first, Jack doesn't make it easy. He shouldn't. Heartland has always been a place where growth is earned, not handed out. But as Dex starts working, not for thrills, not for attention, but because he wants to be better, something in Jack softens. He sees a reflection of the young Ty in Dex, just as many of us viewers have. And this is where the emotional threads of the series weave together beautifully. Ty came to Heartland lost, angry, unsure of his place in the world. And it was Heartland, not through grand gestures, but through patience, work, and tough love, that helped him find his purpose. Dex stands at the beginning of a similar journey. And Katie, whether she realizes it or not, is the person who lit the spark that pushed him forward. The emotional significance of this cannot be overstated. While Amy and Nathan are struggling under the weight of love mixed with responsibility and legacy, Dex and Katie are stepping into their own story, one filled with hope, promise, and the raw beginnings of something meaningful. And if you pay attention, you can feel the parallels forming. Amy and Nathan are being pulled apart by the past. Dex and Katie are being pulled together by the future. These contrasts make episode 7 one of the most narratively rich episodes of the season. It doesn't rely on big dramatic scenes or explosive confrontations. Instead, it lets characters collide in quiet, emotional ways, where growth happens slowly, painfully, and deeply. And while Dex and Katie's connection is still gentle and unspoken, there is no denying the spark forming between them. Katie helping Dex earn his place back at Heartland becomes their first shared mission, a moment of trust, support, and partnership. And it will be this partnership that slowly grows into something more. Not rushed, not forced, but inevitable. Just like how Amy and Ty's love grew out of shared challenges. Dex and Katie's bond begins with understanding each other at their most uncertain moments. And that is why, while the heartbreak unfolding between Amy and Nathan may feel heavy and difficult to watch, the rise of Dex and Katie offers a quiet promise, one that suggests Heartland's legacy will continue not through dramatic declarations, but through the gentle growth of two young hearts learning who they are meant to become together. As the emotional threads of episode 7 tighten, the tension between Amy and Nathan reaches a point where silence speaks louder than words. Amy, who has always been the kind of person to feel deeply but express herself quietly, begins sensing that something is shifting beneath the surface of their relationship. She doesn't want to push him because she knows pressure is the one thing Nathan cannot handle right now. Yet at the same time, she can't ignore the distance growing between them. And the heartbreaking part is she tries to rationalize it. She tells herself that he is just stressed, that the situation with his sister will pass, that the ranch issues will settle down eventually. She keeps believing that things will fall back into place. But deep inside, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. Fear. Not fear of being alone, but fear of losing something she has only just allowed herself to love again. Nathan's internal conflict grows stronger with every scene. He knows Amy deserves honesty, but honesty feels heavy, like it might break everything. His sister's words echo constantly in his head about the ranch, their father's legacy, and the consequences of letting emotion lead instead of logic. And even though Nathan tries to stand firm, reminding himself that Heartland has shown him more kindness, peace, and meaning than any place has in years, he can't shake the feeling that he owes his family something more than his own happiness. The worst part is that Nathan genuinely loves Amy. That is not the problem. The problem is that he was not ready for love to demand so much so soon. He hasn't taken the time to understand his own grief, his own history, or the guilt he carries. So when the pressure rises, he retreats into himself rather than opening up. And Amy, who once waited years for Ty to learn how to be emotionally present, finds herself facing a painful familiarity. She recognizes the signs: the quiet, the hesitation, the emotional walls being rebuilt brick by brick. This is where episode 7 does something incredibly powerful. It shows the contrast between Amy's healing and Nathan's unresolved past. Amy has already walked through grief. She has already lost, learned, and rebuilt herself from the ground up. She is not seeking rescue or escape. She is seeking partnership. But Nathan is still standing in the shadows of what came before. His identity is tangled in the ranch, his sister's expectations, and the memory of a father he never feels he measured up to. So when push comes to shove, Nathan begins to pull away. Not because he wants to, but because he doesn't know how to hold on to someone and hold on to responsibility at the same time. And Amy feels it. Not in dramatic outbursts, but in the quiet moments. The ones where Nathan avoids eye contact, where his voice sounds distant, where his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes anymore. It is in these small, heartbreaking moments that Amy's emotional journey in episode 7 becomes deeply relatable. She begins questioning whether she opened her heart too soon, whether she misread the connection, whether she allowed herself to hope before she was ready. And this is where the emotional weight hits hardest, because for the first time since Ty, Amy allowed herself to imagine a future with someone. She allowed herself to believe that love could exist without pain. And now that hope feels fragile again, the ranch itself becomes a symbol of the emotional divide. Heartland was always a place of healing. But for Nathan, his family ranch is a place of identity, obligation, and unfinished stories. So when his sister pushes him harder, reminding him of finances, legacy, and reputation, Nathan feels cornered. And episode 7 begins to show the heartbreaking reality of this pressure. Nathan might actually convince himself that choosing responsibility is the right thing, even if it means breaking Amy's heart, even if it means betraying himself. Meanwhile, Jack watches all of this unfold with the quiet wisdom of someone who has lived long enough to recognize emotional crossroads when he sees them. He sees Amy fighting to stay strong even while she feels the ground shift beneath her. And he sees Nathan struggling under the expectations of a legacy he didn't ask for. Jack knows better than anyone that love requires courage, but courage can only come from someone who is ready to choose it. And Nathan, at this moment, is struggling to choose anything at all. This section of the story is painful, not because of what is said, but because of what goes unsaid. The unspoken words, the quiet distance, the emotional hesitation. And all of it builds toward a moment that we know is coming, a moment that may break Amy's heart for a second time. And the saddest part is she sees it coming, and she braces herself. Because Amy has already learned what it feels like to love someone who cannot stay. As episode 7 reaches its most emotional point, the tension that has been slowly building finally crystallizes into reality. This is the moment where everything that has been quietly shifting beneath the surface comes into focus. Amy is no stranger to heartache, but this time the pain is different because it doesn't come from loss or fate. It comes from choice. And that is what makes it harder to accept. In her past, life made the decisions for her. Ty was taken too soon, in a way nobody could have prepared for. The grief that followed swallowed her whole, but she eventually learned how to live alongside it. This time, however, she is faced with a hurt that comes from watching someone she loves turn away, not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to choose her without losing something else. And that type of pain is much sharper, much more personal. Nathan's emotional journey in this episode reaches a breaking point as well. On the surface, it might seem like he is simply struggling with the ranch and financial decisions, but underneath it all lies a deeper truth. Nathan has never truly decided who he wants to be. His life has always been shaped by expectation. His father's expectations, his sister's expectations, and now the expectations the ranch places on him. When Amy entered his life, she represented something he hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. The freedom to build something new, to imagine a future that isn't chained to the past. But even though he longs for that future, he has never allowed himself to believe he deserves it. So when his sister corners him yet again, reminding him of everything they stand to lose, Nathan finally breaks under the weight of it. He starts convincing himself that stepping back from Amy is the only responsible choice, the only way to protect the legacy his father left behind. In his mind, sacrificing love becomes a noble act, when in reality, it is fear disguised as duty. And this is where the emotional devastation of episode 7 truly unfolds. Because Amy, without meaning to, becomes the symbol of everything Nathan believes he cannot have yet. She becomes the future he wants, but does not feel ready to choose. And that realization hits Amy harder than she expected. She does not fight him. She does not plead or demand answers. She simply listens, her heart breaking quietly, the same way it did years ago when she had to face another loss she never asked for. The difference is that this time, she doesn't fall apart. She stands steady, even though her voice may tremble. Because Amy has learned how to survive heartbreak. She has learned how to breathe through pain without letting it consume her. But even so, the ache is undeniable. She had finally found someone she could imagine loving again, someone she believed could love her back without fear. And now, she must face the possibility that love alone may not be enough. Meanwhile, Dex and Katie's storyline continues to rise as a hopeful counterbalance to the emotional storm between Amy and Nathan. Dex's slow shift toward maturity, encouraged by Katie's gentle understanding, begins to shape a future that feels new and promising. Their connection is not rushed. It is not forced. It is growing quietly, naturally, the same way Amy and Ty once began. And this contrast is no accident. Heartland has always been a show about cycles, how love and loss create room for new beginnings. Katie helping Dex earn back Jack's trust becomes more than a moment of redemption. It becomes the foundation of a bond built on partnership and growth. And this matters deeply because Heartland's future has always depended on someone who could carry the values of the ranch into the next generation. Dex and Katie are slowly, softly becoming those people. So when the episode ends, we are left suspended in the space between heartbreak and hope. Amy stands at a crossroads, not shattered, but changed. She now understands that love must be chosen, actively, every day. And Nathan must learn that lesson on his own. He must decide whether he will continue living in the shadow of his past or step into a future where he allows himself to love without conditions. And the truth is, episode 7 does not give us that answer.